All right, with me tonight is Tony Bickel. Tony is the president of Wisconsin for Children and Families. He's a colleague of mine. We connected several years ago because what they do is similar to what we do with the Dad's Resource Center. And I kind of look up to him almost as a mentor type of figure because he's been doing this for a heck of a long time. And the organization up there has been doing a lot of great things for a couple of decades now. And so I thought I'd take the opportunity to be able to have him talk about what they're doing up there and the kind of models that we can have to help fathers who are going through the things that they go through. But before we get going, I want to talk to Tony maybe about a little bit about football. I'm a Steelers fan. And of course, Big Ben retired. And like all these Steeler fans had it in their mind that, oh, we're going to get Aaron Rodgers. And I'm like, why would Aaron Rodgers leave the Packers to come to the Steelers?
He could have. The people here in Wisconsin sure weren't positive where he's going to go. And things are just, I would never have thought that Matt Flynn would be going to Indianapolis. I would never thought that Deshaun Watson would be going to Cleveland.
Yeah.
This stuff is just, people are moving around. It should be a great year next year. And it's not just quarterbacks. We lost Devontae Adams, which is arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL. And he went to the Raiders, but he had a relationship with Carr. They were in college together. So I can understand that, but that's a huge loss. We didn't expect that. So it'll be exciting next year, and I can't wait.
The one thing about Rodgers is he's like Brady, who, hit that 40-year-old barrier and he's still playing at such an extraordinarily high level,
Well, Rodgers isn't 40. Rodgers is probably, I think he's 37.
Okay.
But he's not as old as Brady. And certainly when he goes like this, he doesn't have as many rings as Tom has. But Rodgers has something, that Tom actually doesn't have as far as the touchdown to interception ratio. It's just crazy good for Rodgers. So he's got something that's exceptionally unique in the NFL. But I wish he had rings on his fingers too, because then I would have bought, fake ones.
Well, end of the day, and as a Steeler fan, let me tell you, the Patriots have tortured us, right, over a very long period of time. Because I got to tell you, we'd have a few more of those if it wasn't for those suckers, because they took us out in AFC championship games on more than one occasion. So
right. They're definitely a dynasty, the Boston. So what are you going to do? Or New England?
So, all right. I guess to come around the business at hand a little bit, Tony, just some questions to talk about you and the organization. So just to start off, can you share a little bit about your background? Who's Tony Bickel and how did you get to where you are now?
Sure. So I live in Wisconsin, and I had been married for 14 years, have two daughters. And unfortunately, our marriage came to an end in 1997. I wasn't aware of WFCF at that point in time, but I was able to go through court, go to the family court, and we had a shared parenting situation where I had the girls 43% of the time, and my ex-wife had them 57% of the time. So it was it worked out very well for me, and I was very happy with it. But I found out that there was a lot of other. After you get divorced, I guess your ears start to hear that other people have gone through a divorce, and I heard a lot of people had gone through it, and the outcomes weren't as great as what had happened for me. So a couple of years after my divorce, I found out about WFCF, and I decided to join because I wanted to try to help other people in some way. I didn't even know how I would help them, but I wanted to help them in some way. Now, I had gone to court a number of times, 5 or 6 times, and I had never had a lawyer. And I always was successful, but that of course has a lot to do with the situations and the circumstances involved. I'm certainly not saying no one needs a lawyer. But I was able to successfully go through the family court process and learn how to understand it. So again, I became a member of WFCF in 1999, and I wanted to find ways to help other people. And so I became a really active member in 2013 as the treasurer. So I joined their board. And then in 2016, I became the president. And there's 7 other board members that we have that are actively involved in WFCF on a day-to-day or month-to-month basis.
So how did WFCF come about?
Yeah, so they've been around now for over 30 years, actually. They started out in, I think it was 1989, actually, when a bunch of dads had gotten together and were very upset that fathers weren't being given an opportunity to be more of a significant parent in their kids' lives after their separation than just every other weekend or basically visitation. So these dads got together, and the initial name of the group was Fathers for Equity. And that makes sense. They wanted to be treated equally with the other parent, which was the mom. So they got together, and they most importantly, they helped other fathers with the family court process, because as you know, and everybody that contacts us know, the family court process is kind of a scary process. I mean, most people aren't familiar with court, and family court is just unique, different in many ways. So they got together. They started to help other parents or fathers going through the process. They also became involved in educating legislators about the benefits of having both parents involved, and also the fact that they felt like their fathers were hitting a wall and were unable to be treated equally, and that shouldn't really be that way for the best interest of kids. So they had a newsletter that they put out every couple of months. I think I got them, and just educated people on what was going on, and ways to become involved. And parenting in the 90s was starting to change as well. Mothers and fathers' roles were becoming very comparable. It was difficult to say, this is something that a mom does, this is something that a dad does. It seemed like everything was something that a parent does. So parents were starting to think about involvement post-separation, and the unlikely or the unfortunate event that happened, that both parents wanted to be involved. So things were changing. So they were able to, they changed the name in the late 90s to Wisconsin Fathers for Children and Families. And then again, we changed the name to just Wisconsin for Children and Families, so we could be more inclusive, because there's a lot of moms out there too that are having a difficult time with family court for the same reasons that fathers do, and we want to be more inclusive. So that's basically the history of WFCF.
Now, what are some of the things that Wisconsin for Children and Families does?
Okay, that's so one of the main thing that we do, and the main thing that people know us for, is that we help a lot of people navigate through, so that they know what forms to do, and we give them advice on how to act or not act in family court. And so personally, we help now about 250 people through an email helpline. And again, we email them forms and tell them where to file them and what to do. And every one of the people that come to our helpline, we do a little background on them and try to provide advice as if, you know, we were in their shoes. So we want everyone to be able to get significant parental time with their kids. And we also, before COVID hit us, is we had in-person meetings in 10 cities all around Wisconsin. So every month in 10 different cities, there was a meeting at a bar or a restaurant or a coffee house or something where people could come together and talk in person. And that communication is sometimes very meaningful to people, and no question about that. We also provide a newsletter, like they started back in 1989, that we put out about quarterly or 3 times a year. that talks about family and co-parenting issues and family court issues and trying to help more two-parent involvement with kids. We also now, due to COVID, we still have some in-person meetings in some of the places in Wisconsin, but we provide, just like this, we provide 4 Zoom meetings a month. So again, people can talk live about issues and try to get some feedback, not only from people from WFCF, but from other people that are in the same shoes that want to talk about things together. There's some effect there that you get that is valuable to people, no question, to know that they're not alone in the struggle, right? And it is a struggle because it's hard sometimes. So that's basically what we do.
You guys also were go ahead. You guys are also involved with some good advocacy work too, right?
Right. So we also do some lobbying. Now we're a 503c, so or 501c3. I'm sorry. So we can't do a ton of lobbying, but we do lobbying. So we have citizen lobbying going on at the Capitol, and we promote bills that promote shared parenting, promote co-parenting, promote making family court simpler and easier for people to navigate, and simpler. So we do that. We meet with legislators. We ask people to send letters to legislators and call legislators. So we do that lobbying thing, but it's not more than 25% of what we do based on the 501c3 status.
Okay. All right. What are some of the successes that the organization has had over the years?
Okay. So again, it took these Fathers for Equity, and then later on the Wisconsin Fathers for Children and Families, over 10 years to get something to happen significant, and talking to people and talking to people and talking to people. But in 1999/2000, we had a governor named Tommy Thompson, which was a very well-liked governor. And they were able to get 2 pieces of legislation added to our statutes. One that said that joint custody is in the best interest of children. And by doing that, they made it so that 90% of parents, whether they're married or divorced or divorcing, end up with joint custody. So both parents are involved in the decision-making process. And that's a big deal. And it's defined as the best interest of children that both parents are involved. The other thing they added to the statute was they added that it was worded that it is in the best interest of children to maximize the time that the children have with each parent. Now, it didn't say equalize, and it didn't say equal time, but it said maximize the time. And it pointed people, not just judges and court commissioners, but parents, to realize that it's important to have time with both parents and have significant amounts of time to it. I'm not sure about Pennsylvania, but in Wisconsin, probably 90% of placement orders are decided by the parents, by a stipulation or an agreement between the 2 parents. So when we statutorily, I'm sorry, define that both parents being significantly involved and having maximum time with each parent was in the best interest of a child, it kind of led a lot of parents to look at shared parenting in a different light. And the result was shared parenting in Wisconsin went up significantly from say 2000 to 2010. It went up at least 2.5 times of what it was. And now it's, for divorced people, it's probably 65 to 70% of divorces end up with shared parenting, with about 40% of them ending up with equal shared parenting in Wisconsin, which is crazy high. And for unmarried parents, it's not quite as high. It's actually not even close. It's about 30% of them end up with shared parenting, 25, 30%. So that was the biggest thing that WFCF ever did. Now, for the last 20 years, we've been working on trying to get an initial presumption of equal shared parenting is in the best interest of a child. And we've also started trying to just get the phrase shared parenting is in the best interest of a child, just so everybody starts on the same page. You know, that's the best interest.
Well, Pennsylvania sure could use some of that. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So what has been some of the biggest challenges for the organization?
Um, so once you start doing this for a while, you find lots of people that are very excited, especially when they're involved in family court, um, in trying to affect change, and that's fantastic. And we had them coming to the Capitol with us. We had them doing outreach things where we were having things at fairs and that kind of stuff. And we still do those things, to kind of an outreach thing to let people know that we're here to help people. But people get burned out, especially after their family court case kind of dies down and things settle out, and people become, they kind of put it behind them and past them, and people kind of drift away from the passion that it takes to continue pushing, to try to make things better. So we get volunteers, but it's hard to keep volunteers for long periods of time. And I totally understand that. If things settle down, you probably want to make that part of your past. But there's a small core of people that want to continue to make it so that it's slightly better and slightly better and slightly better for the next generation. So,
Well, there's no doubt that it can be such an intensely painful
yeah,
situation. And
right,
so many fathers come to us and they're like, and they're hopeless and they can't get out of it. And they're like, I just want some meaning to come from my experience. And that meaning for me would be to somehow share my story or to help. You
right,
see that a lot.
yeah,
But then I can also see where if people do get through it, okay, I got to get that behind me. I got to have a life, and be normal and not deal with just the trauma that you have
right.
when you're trying to be in your child's life and you can't be in your child's life.
I don't want to remember that pain if I've healed up. You bet. I mean, there's lots of folks like that, and that's totally understandable. But like you say, there are so many people that are emotionally deeply scarred by this process that just need to lean on somebody. It's nice that people are there for them to lean on, and people step up, new people step up to help allow people to lean on them.
One of the biggest things in social work in the human services field and even in education is trauma informed care. Look at people
Yep.
through trauma lens and those types of things. But I got to tell you, it usually is in regard to children, understandably, or women or mothers. I don't think I've ever had someone talk about the trauma that a father goes through. And I'm sure you've seen this. I know I have seen this. We have fathers that have come to us that are suicidal, right? And are
Sure.
talking about self-harm. I mean,
Sure.
that's how deep it cuts. But that's lost. It isn't considered when people are looking at these types of situations.
It's hard for people to understand that, because it's hard to, in your mind, to realize that you're having something taken away that is absolutely unbearable to be taken away, a relationship with a child. And also, I don't think people realize that there's just no way that a parent can be in great pain and to be separated and hurt by that separation and not have that affect the child or the children. It absolutely does. I mean, we all know, I'm remarried and that, and we have a child now too. And I know when my child is upset or saddened or worried about something, and we know that about our spouses. So kids definitely know that about a parent that's suffering. And there's no valid reason why that has to happen many times. There just isn't. And I don't know what the benefit would be. I don't think the benefit is what people think it is, but that's.
Well, I think in these types of situations, people focus on the mother and the father. They don't even think about the children. Oh, well, mom
Yeah,
and dad aren't getting along. But who's the real loser? Like, as much pain as
yeah,
what the parents may be going through, the children are going through worse pain, no
you
doubt about
bet.
it.
You bet. I mean, they certainly don't want to hear bad stuff about either one of their parents. And sometimes people think, and we all slip sometimes. Sometimes people think, well, hey, it's true, and we should be aware of truths. Not always, and certainly not when you're a kid. It's just, that's not a truth. And people slip sometimes there. Everyone's human, but
Right.
it's easy to make that mistake.
I got into supervising some supervised visits for fathers during the break, the pandemic, because fathers who, in order to get unsupervised visits, they had to do supervised visits, and there was nothing that really necessitated it. It's just a hoop they had to jump through. So I helped with
Right.
some, and it took me back because I used to do direct service in my first career for 15 years. I was a family counselor working with children and families. But it put me in tune with the perspective of children. And so courts get guardian ad litem's, or the judges are like, oh, I'm going to talk to the children and see what the children want. And it brought me back to say, you don't need to talk to them. I can tell you what these children want. They want mom and dad to get along.
Right.
They don't want endless negotiations. They don't want chaos. They want tension. That's what they want, and that's what the court's got to focus on, and not let these things drag out for years and years. Judges got to start putting their foot down and saying, no, okay, if you guys aren't going to resolve this, I'm going to resolve it. Neither one of you are hurting the children, right? No harm or anything like that. We're going to give some portion of shared custody. You two just need to deal with it. I mean, judges just got to come around to doing that instead of just letting it linger for half a decade or even a decade or more.
2 years, 3 years is a long time to be fighting. It certainly is. And I agree. And certainly the kids definitely know when the parents, for lack of a better word, I guess, hate the other parent. That's something that they just definitely don't want to see. They don't have no problem with the parents maybe going their separate ways or being individuals and no longer living together, but they don't want the hate. And extended court cases, it promotes that. It promotes that. Stuff festers in people. I think there's another thing that people don't realize is that the courts can't make the parents good to each other. They just can't. There's a certain level of things that you find undesirable that you just have to live with. And you got to discern what that is. That was one thing that I learned probably maybe a year and a half after my initial divorce, is that there's certain things that if they're happening, that's terrible and that's horrible. I hate to hear that happening to you, but there's nothing that can be done about that. So you got to find a way to put it away somewhere and get it away from you and stop staying focused on it, because nothing in that aspect can be changed. And that was a really important thing, at least for me. It helped me not become worry so much about certain things. You worry about things you can't change. Certainly that helps you to, be thinking more about the things that you can change, which happens to mainly be yourself, right?
That's the only thing that you can control, end of the day, is you.
Right.
What you say and do. You can't control what the other person is saying and doing. You just can't.
And we know that we're examples for our kids. And we're really, that's probably the loudest thing that we ever say, even though it doesn't come through our vocal cords, but our actions. That's what they remember. That's what I remember about my parents. And they're both gone right now, but it's their actions, their mannerisms, the way they handle things, not necessarily when they said, hey, Tony, don't ever do that again, or you better be home at 10. I don't remember those things, but I remember how they handled things. So how we handle things is something that our kids probably pick up more on, and how the other parent handles stuff more than what the parent really thinks. That's my take.
Their eyes are always on us.
You bet.
Always. So talking about your fathers, what are some of the things that you hear from them most frequently?
Well, the thing I hear the most frequent, probably the highest frequency, it would be they would like to have some free legal help. And I understand why people feel that that's possible, because there is a bunch of free help, in our country for many different things. But family court isn't one of them. It just isn't. In some cases, if there's a domestic violence, there's free help for a victim of domestic violence. If someone's super poor, there's there's sometimes help for those people, but for the vast majority of people, there is no free help. In fact, it's the opposite. There's help, but it's super costly. And once again, it moves at a snail's pace. And in some cases, I think legal help is like an addiction where you just keep writing a check and you keep kind of running in the same place all the time. My take is I wish family court would not even allow lawyers, would simply just have the two parents and potentially a mediator, or just the two parents and put them into a room and say, look, come out when you're ready to do what's best for your kids. I think they would do it eventually. They did it before they separated. They did.
So, and one of the things, and I kind of got this concept before. I've been doing this for going on 5 years now. Attorneys are like anything else. I refer to it as the 20% theory, where anything you do in life, if you get 5 or more people, you're going to have the A team, the B team, the C team, the D team, and the E team. And it's the same with lawyers. You're going to have really good lawyers, average lawyers, bad lawyers, and really bad lawyers. And what's unfortunate is that a lot of people who find themselves in these circumstances, they never would have thought to get a lawyer generally, but specifically for something like this. And so they just go out and get someone, and they have a limited amount of money to start with. And if they get a decent lawyer, it might help them through this. But if they get a bad lawyer, they're dropping thousands of dollars, which is all they really have, and they get nowhere.
Right.
And so one of the biggest tragedies that we see time after time after time is kind of the thing you're saying about putting good money after bad money into lawyers in this whole process and just getting absolutely nowhere. And that's money that they don't have, but it's money that could have went to the children.
You bet.
To help pay for a college fund, or to, and one of the other aspects of the whole tragedy of what we're dealing with.
When a parent spends $5,000, what's being spent is 10 from that kid's relationship with the two parents. Or if the parent spends 10, they're actually spending 20. That's a lot of money. And I think people feel like lawyers can do some special thing, like they have a wand. And they don't really have a wand, actually. If you can present yourself and not make, because the court commissioner and the judge only see you for a very short period of time, as well as a guardian ad litem. If you can just present yourself in a very, very good way for those short periods of time, that's the best lawyer you could ever have. Because most people want to see, I believe this strongly, I think most people want to see two parents involved in every kid's life. They do. It's just, if you have to make a decision, you're going to go with the person that makes you feel the least uncomfortable. And I don't want, most of the people that come to us are fathers. I don't want fathers making GALs or court commissioners or mediators, for that matter, or anybody involved in the family court uncomfortable. When you argue, you make other people feel uncomfortable. We all know that. I've been in an argument with a friend, and the other friends didn't like it. And that makes sense. So I try to help fathers understand, or at least take in consideration, that this is the only thing they're going to see of you. And you really got to have your best foot forward. And actually, just like everything in life, the best thing to do is really not talk more than you need to. If the other parent is, from what I've heard from all these people we've talked to, and I've talked to almost 2,000 people over the last 6 years, if there is really a problem with the other parent, if you let them talk enough, it'll become apparent to everybody involved. Long as you don't make it look like you're both got a problem. So it'll settle out if you let the other person kind of let the story be told, I guess.
So going back a little bit to that trauma thing I was talking about, what
Mhm.
happens though is we're guys, we're repressed, right? You know, we have a hard time talking about our feelings. And once we get behind the eight ball and our emotions get the most of us and we're feeling powerless, like you said, you look angry,
You
you
bet.
know, and then that is off-putting and that doesn't help.
It doesn't. I mean, I'm not saying that feeling is unnatural. Feeling is totally natural, but you've got to contain that. And you've got to contain the negative connotation that others see in that. You know, you're condescending. Maybe you didn't want to look that way, but that's how it appears. Cheapers, you don't want to send that message. You know, you just, it's hard to keep those feelings inside. Like you say, as men, we're kind of taught, at least I'm 60, so we were taught, you know, shoot your mouth off right away. State your position right away. You know, but that's not a good idea most of the time. It just isn't.
All right,
You're not
and
going to do.
I guess we talked about a little bit earlier, but um how does it all affect the children? Like at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. Is we're trying to make sure. What I say, I've said this countless times. Mothers and fathers give different but equally important things to their children. Children need both of them actively engaged in their upbringing for them to have the best shot at being successful in life. You know, and if you take one of them out of the equation, it just makes it harder for them. They'll have an incomplete childhood, won't be as prepared to be successful in life again, as I said. So, like, what's some of the impact that you've seen, or speak to the children a little bit?
Well, certainly having two people involved means you're teaching your kids that you have to negotiate. You have to work together. You have to be on a team in certain scenarios. And certainly parenting, it has to be a team effect. That's something that's really important for kids to learn. The other side of the coin that I would say, and I harp on this all the time because all these academics like Linda Nielsen and some of the others, I just talked to her recently. I love the papers she does. They show how important it is to the kids for their well-being that both parents are involved. I'm not saying they have to be equally involved. They could be, but if they're both involved, kids do way better academically. Kids also don't struggle with all the hardships of being a teenager, you know, like pregnancy and dropping out of school and drugs and getting in trouble with the law and that kind of stuff. The percentage of the kids that have those troubles goes way down if both parents are involved. You got 4 sets of eyes on the kids because they're both involved. You got 4 sets of ears because both parents are listening to them and they're coming from a different direction. Certain things my daughter talks to my wife about, you know, other things she's going to talk to me about. And they need that. They absolutely need that. They need to have the two people, and those two people being involved and working together in some way is an important thing. And those studies, the studies of 60 studies shows that there's no question that it's has a positive effect on kids and decreases the negative effects.
That's very well said. I like that 4 sets of eyes, or 2 sets of eyes, and 2 sets of ears.
Right.
One of the things I kind of say, one of my quips I like to throw out in interviews sometimes is, if your child sleeps 8 hours, that leaves 16 hours for the remainder of the day. That's 2 8-hour shifts, right?
Absolutely.
It's a 2-person
Absolutely.
job.
Yeah. And they're going to be tired after an 8-hour shift. I guarantee you that.
Got to tap
Yes,
out, man.
absolutely.
Got to tap
Yep.
out. Yeah.
Right.
So, all right, I guess, kind of starting to wrap it up a little bit.
Mhm.
Moving forward, what more can be done, or what needs to be done about this situation?
So again, in Wisconsin, I talked about this briefly, from the the initial presumption of equal shared placement, which Kentucky has done and Arkansas has done, and having that be the starting point. And in some ways, the statutes that we have here in Wisconsin imply that's a starting point. And I think in most people's eyes, they look at both parents equally. until they hear or see something that would make them feel differently. I think we've got to get people to realize how important it is to their kids that both these parents are involved. What I'm saying is I want fathers to be invited and not pushed off or pushed away. I want them to be actually by the other parent pulled in a little bit to be involved, because we know that it's best for those kids. And I understand how some parents, if they were the primary caregiver, and then before the separation, they might think, oh, gee, this is the way it should stay. But that's not the way it should stay, because things changed for the two parents. You need to help the other parent a little bit to pick up some of the slack, and everyone's parental life is going to change differently. Mine changed significantly. I had a stay-at-home mother that I got divorced from. So I had to pick up some things and do some things that I wasn't doing before. And I was able to do them, which was a great surprise. And the same thing holds true for their mom. She had to pick up some things and do them, and she was able to do them. So it's empowering for our kids to see that. So I want both parents to realize it's in the best interest of those kids. So I want our statutes in Wisconsin to say specifically, shared parenting is in the best interest of children, just like it says joint custody is in the best interest of children. And just start all the parents on the right track. Like I say, 90% of these are decided by the parents stipulating. I mean, the courts kind of nudge them and push them. You know, the mediator kind of nudges and pushes them, and guardian ad litem kind of nudges them and pushes them. But they're trying to push them to come to an agreement, because nobody knows what's best for those kids except for those two parents. And I want those parents to start from the beginning to know that shared parenting is more than likely going to be the best interest of their kids. So work toward that. Instead of being an adversarial thing. One parent wins. Mom wins, dad loses, dad wins, mom loses. We don't want that. We don't want it to be adversarial. I don't think. The kids certainly don't, right? We just talked about that. Everybody wins, and the taxpayers win too.
Yeah.
They
Right.
absolutely do. They're paying for the family courts. I mean, the parents are paying for the lawyers, but the taxpayers are paying to run them family courts. Let's save some money. Let's point parents in the right direction. We did a survey in Wisconsin, a really good survey through National Parenting Organization, about a year and a half ago, or whatever. And it showed that, and these are just random people that were surveyed, that like 95% of parents in Wisconsin, or people in Wisconsin, I'm sorry, feel that shared parenting is best for kids. Everybody feels that way. Well, let's start those parents that are at a tough time in their life, and an emotional time in their life, and a scary time in their life. Let's start them on a good foundation. Let's find a way to shared parent to your kids. That's my spiel. And that's what I do.
Well, very well said. Again, and someone who's been doing it a long time and helping a lot of parents and children along with that. There's no doubt, if there is not legitimate issues of harm involved,
Right.
legitimate issues, right? If there's not legitimate issues, and if the parents aren't, okay, well, this circumstance and working things out on their own, it should be, like you said, in that 45-55, close to, half. That's just the way it should be working out, because it's a different world today than what it was, like you said, in the 80s, prior to that, where dad was working, mom was stay at home, or those types of things. We're just living in a completely different world, and the capability to be able to do two homes, in two places, and those kinds of things is just much different in the world that we live in now. So
It is.
yeah, that's absolutely, that should be the standard. And again, I think we both agree strongly. Courts just need to, if it's a year or so to sort it out, if it's contentious at the beginning, fine. But they just can't indulge and continue to allow the back and forth and all of that to occur. They got to start putting their foot down, and not letting it drag out the way that it drags out.
I agree. I mean, there's certain things they can't do anything about, and they need to cut bait at that point, and save the parents the money, save everybody the headache, save the kids the heartache.
Yep.
Deal with it. It's the way it is. Let's move on. right?
All right. So wrapping it up, anything else you'd like to share or anything, Tony, or?
Well, I'd like to do it. I mean, I saw a long interview with of you with somebody else here. It was probably a 45-minute interview. I'd like to do in Wisconsin what you're initiating here in Pennsylvania, where we have a fatherhood project, where we have people getting together and just talking about all the things that we can do to help fathers become more involved. And it's not just family court stuff. There's many other things. So I'm watching closely what you do, and I'm going to mimic it, even if you have a copyright on it, if it works.
Oh, no. Yeah, the Fatherhood Commission we're trying to get going.
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, we branched out a little bit. We help fathers who are involved with children and youth sometimes. And there's a one father I think you've seen, the stuff I was putting out for him. And ultimately, the county did terminate his rights. Again, he had never done any harm to the child, nothing. And no one's even making an accusation or implication. And they still terminated his rights. It's just completely tragic. So, yeah, absolutely. That's yeah. And we can talk and collaborate. And, I know if you put your mind to it, you'll get it going. So, so with me tonight, well, this is Jeff Steiner from the Dad's Resource Center. The Dad's Resource Center provides education, resources, and advocacy for single fathers fighting to be in the lives of their children here in Pennsylvania. It was founded by Dr. Joel N. Myers, who is the founder and CEO of AccuWeather. We provide mentoring, best practices, and coaching for fathers who are going through some of the things similar to what Tony in Wisconsin for Children and Families does, as well as some advocacy work similar to what they do. And so this is, we're trying to kick off and get more videos out and talking to people and expand our reach and be able to get information out there for the people to really understand what's going on. And so the inaugural attempt to do this, I've been so blessed and honored. I don't want to overstate it and all, but to have Tony be a part of this, because again, he's been doing this for a long time. And again, this is Tony Bickel. He's the president and treasurer of Wisconsin for Children and Families. We've been talking, emailing, and all of that, but I think this is the first time we've ever had kind of a face-to-face communication. Yep. So, and hope it won't be the last time. I'm sure it won't. So, we'll check out and just say, going into football season, we'll see who fares better between his Packers and my Steelers this upcoming fall. So,
yeah, we got nobody to throw the ball to, so I guess we'll just be punting. Anyway, thank you, Jeff, for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, my friend. Absolutely. And we'll share it. Once Jasmine does the video up, I'll share it with you so that you can get it out up your way too.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you.
All right, brother. Have a good night.
Good night.